over to you, Rafal. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, David. So by way of introduction, I'm Rafal Kasprzyk. I'm with the account management team here at TOPdesk UK, and today we're going to be looking at TOPdesk optimized for enterprise service management, or as it's sometimes referred to in the industry as shared services. So as you'll see from the image that I've shared there, it's mainly talking about breaking down the silos between departments that traditionally work alongside IT. So HR, facilities, we often hear about the new starter process being a good example of one of those processes that involves cross collaboration between departments. So ultimately, this is where different departments are trying to achieve common goals and breaking down those silos that exist between them. And also working collaboratively should provide better visibility and also improve process efficiency, ultimately leading to a positive user experience for everyone involved. So with that in mind, let's take a quick look at TOPdesk, how it's been optimized to facilitate an ESM approach. So for this demo, I'm going to take you on a bit of a journey. We're going to start by looking at the public-facing side of TOPdesk, namely the self-service portal. We're going to look at two different scenarios. We're going to look at a general user requesting services. We're then going to look at a line manager, somebody with elevated permissions, what they can do to facilitate such a request before concluding by looking at the operator side of the tool. And that's really where a lot of the magic happens. So the first thing you'll notice from TOPdesk is it is a web-based solution. It's also browser agnostic. There's nothing local to install. We do also support multi-factor authentication and single sign-on as standard, as well as any integrations with personnel systems, Active Directory link, etc. So if we log in as the general user, first of all, I'm logging in as somebody called Angie Cape. Now, Angie works in HR. She's a general user of a system, and the first thing that we want to kind of present to you is a self-service portal that's been mocked up with this ESM approach in mind. What we mean by this is designed to be a one-stop shop for all levels of user to be able to access all kinds of services that the organization makes available. So it's not strictly talking about IT services. We also have the HR self-service processes working in parallel, and there will be other examples where different processes are being jointly worked on by the different departments involved. Now, everything you see in terms of the layout of the self-service portal, from the logo in the top left to the banner that surrounds the search bar to the tiles that make up the service catalog, can all be customized to suit the needs of the end user and the organization. For this first example, let's take a look at the My IT service tile. And within this service, you can see that there are a number of sub-pages published by IT. So this is an example of one department publishing their services to make it kind of obvious where to go and find whatever it is the user needs to find. Here we have a service page for the mobile phone services. At the bottom right, we have some FAQs. So these are knowledge articles that are also presented, designed to provide useful information. It's also an example of shifting knowledge left from the operator to the end user in the hopes that they will find what they're looking for before they hit that submit button on the form. If they haven't found what they're looking for, we have published a number of forms along the top in this demo system. The first example is it's obviously the requesting company phone page. Now, all of the forms such as this are customizable using drag and drop capabilities, WYSIWYG logic in TOPdesk, so there is no coding. TOPdesk is a code-free solution. So in this example, we're asking a mandatory question: why do you need this request? So let's suppose now, especially with people returning to the office, there may be more of an uptake in work travel. So require to, or just say work remotely. Do you require a SIM card? We're going to use the example here to show how conditional logic has been set up within the forms. So depending on the answer that's provided here, you can also ensure that you're setting up the user with the relevant data plans as well in this example. And a car kit, we may want to also ask which manager is required to approve this. Of course, in the real world, you may want to have some AD-linked hierarchies already pre-populated in the form, but for illustration purposes, I'm going to show you how we move away from this user towards John Dean, who is the line manager, to approve her request. So we can see that's now been registered via this unique identifier. And from here, Angie can always go into her My Requests tile to see where her previously logged tickets and requests are up to. If we have a look at this example that we've just logged here, we can see that it's next in line in terms of the approval workflow for John Dean, her line manager, to approve. That's a preliminary request for approval at this stage. So what we're going to do now is we're going to dive out of this view and log back in as the line manager, John Dean, and then we're going to pick up the thread from there. So the first thing you're going to notice when the page loads is that although the general look and feel of the self-service portal of John is pretty similar, there are some exceptions. And one of those is that you'll notice there are some additional services available to him based on his hierarchy and permission as a manager in terms of his hierarchy. So there are some additional services available to him, but not only that, on the left-hand side, there is an approvals widget that's available to for his user group. And within the approvals widget, we can see Angie Cape's request. So this is the form she filled in within the self-service portal. We can see the attachment as well that comes with that. And on the right-hand side, there's the approvals workflow, which has been mapped out to show that John Dean is next in line to approve. So we're just going to approve the standard change now. Notice as I've done that now, the preliminary request for approval has taken place. It's now going to be processed by IT services as a standard change. So that's a little bit of an overview of how we kind of take that service request and then process it as a line manager. All of this is facilitated via the front end only. So users like John who don't need to be licensed as operators because they're essentially carrying out approval processes within the public facing side of TOPdesk. Now, the next common example that we see within ESM is the new starter process. I know we mentioned this. Earlier in the example of commonly processes that are worked on by different departments. So we're going to take a quick look at the HR service here. And you'll notice that even within the HR service, that there are other types of services available, such as pay-related questions that can be answered, registering sick leave and things like that. In this example, we're going to take a look at the new starter process. And we can see that there is yet again another form that's been filled in using the form designer in TOPdesk, and it's essentially capturing the details from the line manager about the person that's going to be joining the business. So there are some questions here that once again is an example of location-based conditional logic in here. So depending on which site or location the user starting in, will throw up some location-specific options to ensure that they're being set up correctly. And in the back end, that saves you having different multiple iterations of the same change process. You're having one instead linked to a dynamic form. So far we've looked at the IT department working, we've looked at HR. Let's now take a look at yet another department that often comes on board maybe in a later phase, and that's facilities and estates. So it may well be that John is trying to deliver a meeting or a presentation, and one of the air conditioning units isn't working. So we do have also another route to find the answer available to him, and that's via the search bar available at the top. And TOPdesk search provides some dynamic searching capabilities. So if I search for air conditioning unit, if I start typing, TOPdesk will bring up any results that contain the keywords. These are specific to the user logged in. But at the very top, we have services and forms available. We can see more information about the air conditioning unit that's owned, managed by facilities. Yet again, we have some FAQs on the right-hand side, and then the forms presented that are specific. And this just ensures that it gets triaged and routed to the correct department in the back end once the form is filled in. So here we need to fill in the malfunction type. Now, as I'm about to type, notice that the FAQs on the bottom right of the page update to reflect the keywords. So TOPdesk is kind of like TOPdesk's attempt to bring up the most relevant knowledge in a last-ditch effort to provide them with the fix. So we'll just put something random in there, and in the forms it's possible to link to an object type or a machine type as well if it's known. Users can also browse their assets if they want to, if they're unsure. And then yet again, you can see there's a unique identifier now. This time it starts with a naming convention for I. I stands for incident. In the facilities world, these would be work orders. And just finally, to wrap up on the self-service portal, it's also possible to track requests. So we looked at this briefly with Angie Kate, but what I also want to show you is there is a feedback mechanism. Now, one of the big buzzwords for 2020 and 21 was actually around sentiment analysis, feedback scoring, particularly with more and more users working from home or with a hybrid working environment. It's been more important to gauge the general overview of satisfaction and sentiment. TOPdesk comes with a 5-star feedback mechanism, which can be embedded within the email closures, as well as the self-service portal, such as we're seeing here. And this data can be extrapolated into reports using the report builder in the backend. And as a kind of very final point, it is also possible to broadcast any kind of major incidents that are affecting general users. So in TOPdesk, we encourage the use of the broad service disruptions widget here to broadcast and publish information around things like emails not working, where users can find out more information about that broad service that's potentially affecting them. They can opt themselves in, as this user has done, but it's not restricted to IT. So it may well be that facilities have a very similar use case and they want to share information about a lift being down for urgent maintenance, for example. And you can see here the user can opt themselves in one click. What that does is it creates that parent-child ticket relationship between the major incident in the backend and any child tickets linked to it. So that's generally the overview of the self-service portal in terms of the ESM approach. What I want to do now is dive out of this view and really look at the operator side of TOPdesk. Now, the operator side is where the functional kind of side of the solution takes place, and all of the widgets that are there facilitate those processes. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to log in as a very different level of user, somebody called Dawn Meadows. She's a super user with all administration rights, every module enabled for demonstration purposes as well. And as you'll see, the look and feel of this is entirely different from the self-service portal. And it's for good reason, and it's that because it's widget driven, every logged in operator, depending on their role, the permissions that have been assigned to them, to the permission groups, the operator groups that they sit in, on an individual level, they can make the widgets and the landing pages bespoke to them, so that they're focusing on the important data that would assist them with working day to day on any tasks that they have. So we'll see that there is a main pages widget in the top of the page. We won't have time to go through all of these, but as you'll notice, some of you may be familiar with the agile way of working. So a Kanban board, a task board would facilitate a really focused working for the individual operator, perhaps just focusing on overdue tasks or tasks due today. And a plan board is more of a resource planner. So this will be for the service desk team leads or anybody responsible for team management. As well. But the last one I did want to share is the dashboards, because it's a good example of MI reporting and how these different departments that are essentially working from within the same tool are able to achieve visibility of information and data that's pertinent to them. So here we have service desk KPIs visible. So these are all bespoke reports that can be created in TOPdesk using a 5-step report builder. We have an example for IT dashboard reports. Facilities have their own, and then you have the ITIL aligned modules as well that can also be used by different departments. TOPdesk does also support integrations with other business intelligence tools like Power BI. You can even take that data from the OData feed and embed the reports within the dashboards, both on the front end and the back end of TOPdesk as well. Now, in terms of some of the other widgets that you can see here, some of you may remember that we looked at the broad service disruptions widget for broadcasting major incidents in the front end. Now, the corresponding view for the operator would be this one here. It's called current major calls. And we do have the case where users aren't always using the self-service portal. In fact, it tends not to be the most popular channel, at least initially. Emails and telephone calls and walk-ups to the service desk are also commonly utilized by end users to log requests and issues. So if somebody was to walk up and say that they're affected by the emails not working, TOPdesk does support the quick kind of linking functionality. So in just one click, we can add the caller's name. The details can be pulled from AD. Everything else has been provided as a template response, as we can see here. So it's literally a 1 or 2 click process to close that off. And we encourage as much as possible to work with templates in tickets, and we call those standard solutions. On the left-hand side within the shortcuts panel, so this is a quick launch access bar, we have a similar example for forgotten passwords. Again, it's an IT example, but there is no reason why different departments such as HR and facilities can't have their own shortcuts and template responses. So here we have another user, this time Angie Cape, who we logged in initially and she's forgotten her password. Because this is a standardized process, we can once again close it off in just 1 or 2 clicks. That will fire out the email notification in the back end. Now, there are lots of other views that we can look at on the operator landing page. But again, we're not going to have time to go through all of those today. But the tasks is quite a main one, a useful overview to provide the quantitative data in terms of how many tickets there are or tasks based on the different types that align to the ITIL modules available in TOPdesk. So, for example, you can see there are 3 different components of incidents, depending on the operator group that the person sits in, logged in. Same is true of problems and changes as well. So changes consist of a lot more tasks types as well that can be seen here as well. But what we're going to do now is look at an example where somebody is creating a call from scratch. We know nothing about why this person's calling. I just want to show you some examples of automations and the possible options when it comes to logging an incident. So to do this, we're going to open the caller card, which serves the purpose of being a screening process. And we're going to use the example of John Dean again. John is logging a call. This time it's an IT issue, the printer's not working. The first thing we can see is that there's an attention by John's name. So he's a VIP level user. If we want to know more about the person or the caller, we can open his person card and look at the details there. For now, we just want to understand why this person is calling. Maybe he's chasing an update from a previously logged call. Well, we can see all of those historical calls below in the overview here. There is a new feature available in TOPdesk, which is this similar calls functionality, and this is an example of hyper automation being used. It's essentially TOPdesk's way of grouping calls that have similar root causes and assisting operators with trend analysis and problem management. So you can kind of group them together if they're all to do with the same hardware, same category, or any other field set that's linked in some way. For now, we're just going to suggest that this is a new issue. Printer, we're going to say there's a printer error 9090 message at one of the printers. We're going to log a new first line call. We've already pulled the information in from the caller, but in this example, we don't know which printer isn't working, so we're going to find that out by reviewing the John's person card in another tab. We'll have a quick look at the graphic overview, and we can see the printer here, PRT0100. We're going to fill in the object ID based on the information we have there. Now, in terms of filling out the missing field sets in the various blocks that you see on the left-hand side, again, in TOPdesk, we suggest standardizing responses to optimize, response times, resolution time, etc. So for that, we have a knowledge pop-up that's published for operators to use. So we're going to search for any results that contain the word printer. And this top one in this example will provide the fix alongside a standard solution, which is essentially a template. And applying this fix will actually fill in a lot of the missing fields that were previously empty. We can just update that call to say we've responded, and we can save the call. That will then fire out that email that you've seen already. One thing I do want to point out is that there is an editor that comes with the emails in TOPdesk, so it's possible to personalize the email before the user sees it, should you wish, or even use a series of template responses if you prefer. And because there is a unique identifier contained within the subject line of the email, if the user decided to respond via a different channel, everything will be appended to the same ticket to the operator in the backend. So we're now going to close that down. From this point in the process, there's a number of different actions that the operator can take. And one of those might be to create a major call, another might be to create a problem unknown error, a change request, or even create a knowledge item based on an ad hoc fix that was provided. But in this example, I want to point you to something more recent. So there's a new feature that was published in TOPdesk not too long ago called checklists. And what this enables users to do is to split the ticket out into separate component or constituent parts to different operators. Maybe these operators sit within different teams like facilities and HR, and they need to be involved in that process. To do this, you can create new subtasks ad hoc and distribute them. Or better still, if you can create or use a template response, then the better, because then those will be provided where these tasks can be assigned to different operators that sit within the different teams, as you can see here. So once again, we're not going to have time to go through all of that today, so I'm going to park the incident management side of the demo at this point here. What I want to share with you now is that new starter process we looked at from the front end, but show you how the corresponding overview looks like in the back end of TOPdesk. So to do that, we're going to go into the change management templates and find the relevant change process that corresponds to that new starter onboarding process. So if we have a quick look at the employee onboarding or employee startup, as it's called here, we can see it's owned by HR. If we take a look at the activities involved when setting up somebody according to this process, there are at least 4 departments involved, not just IT, but security, facilities, HR as well. Now, how this process looks in terms of the workflow that's been built, well, we can see that displayed here within the Gantt chart. So we have the 13 or so activities on the left-hand side, the various phases, the timeline, and we can see any concurrent or dependencies tasks as well. Operators that get assigned the tasks can be notified to ensure that there are no blind spots, no one's missing and breaching any due dates as well. And that's another example of breaking down those silos and ensuring that everyone involved in a process has the same level of visibility of where a process is up to. So that concludes change. What we're going to do now at this time is take a quick look at asset management and show yet another example of different departments and how they can use assets. So typically, a CMDB is very much a process, an area within ITIL owned by IT, but more recently we're seeing other departments also logging details around non-hardware non-IT assets as well. So TOPdesk's new asset management module is highly customizable. You'll notice from the look and feel, it's actually written on very different architecture. It's much more service-based architecture, and this actually allows a lot more customization within the tool, as well as searching capabilities. So what you're looking at here is an overview of all of the assets available across the entire estate or organization as a whole. On the left-hand side, we have some filtering available. So as an IT, maybe IT manager, I may want to understand which assets I have currently or that are impacted. So if there's an issue with a server, all I have to do is begin to search for that word, and I can see straight away these are all the servers available within the organization. One of those is impacted. If we have a quick look at what that means, we can open up the asset card, ascertain more details. So we can see that the status is currently manually determined. We can also create an API integration, a link or an email action to alert us automatically whenever there is an outage as well. Now, all of the other widgets that make up this asset card are, again, customizable. You can create your own field sets, data sets, whatever you want to do. If you want to upload documentation, it's really up to you. There's even an audit trail to show any changes, any incidents, anything linked to the asset whatsoever, and any assignments in terms of person groups, locations, services, and those hierarchies can be depicted here as well. So that ultimately, when there is an issue of an asset, you can see that within a network topology overview, such as this one here. So server 002 has gone down. We can see that the VM is impacted, well, what's running off the VM, a financial system, and you can see how that's mapped further and further. And the same process can be applied not just to IT assets, I mean, probably not to the same extent, but if we just use the facilities example, if we come back out here, it may well be that the facilities department simply wants to view financial information, warranty details around a coffee machine that's currently faulty, and any other work orders that have been linked to it. So this will be another example of a slightly different application for a non-IT asset. Again, yet another example of how different departments can all work together from a common tool that's set up slightly differently for them, both in parallel and together. So unfortunately, I think that's all the time that we have for the demo today. I hope the overviews provided a good overview of both the front end and the back end in terms of this ESM approach way of working. David, I don't know how we're doing for time, but if it's time for questions, I'll happily take them now. Otherwise, I'll be in the panel at 12:20 to answer any other questions.
Great. Thank you, Rafal. That's really cool. I mean, yeah, we've got a couple of minutes. So there's nothing that's come through. Again, listeners, by all means, ask any questions you have, thoughts, comments, usual stuff. If you could, that'd be great to put to our guest today. The take up, so that sort of dynamic knowledge thing that you showed there. What's your typical? Do you think is the typical take up on that kind of self-service thing? Do you find that depending on the organisation, how they work, or how it's set up, that the end user takes that option more than filling in the form? Is there anything that you have in relation to that, and how best to approach that? Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I think it's one that's probably best answered by understanding, first of all, the level of maturity, or process maturity, and where the organization is up to in delivering a self-service portal to their end users. It's something that we are challenged with typically during implementation as well. In terms of actually publishing a self-service portal with the form would form part of the core implementation process. We tend to look at knowledge as being an integral part of that, but not every organization we talk to is quite there yet and want to implement that as a phase 1 implementation. So sometimes we see that users are still trying to link to SharePoint and other external tools to populate knowledge, but really I think one of the drivers to get the most out of the tool would be to show them the capabilities of embedding those functionalities so that they can also assist the end user with their resolutions. And ultimately those are the things that will give them the value that they need, that will drive them away from the more traditional channels of telephone and email, and hopefully towards a self-service portal.
Yeah, good, brilliant. Well, thanks very much indeed for that, Rafal. Thanks for joining us today. And obviously, as you said, you're on the panel not too long away, actually. So we'll see you then. Look, thank you for that, and we'll move on. Thank you, Rafal.
Thanks.
Good stuff. So let's welcome our next guest then.